Welcome to Nineworks TV. In today's episode, I'm taking you up close to the last 911 to deliver Porsche an outright victory at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. It's the GT1 98. What do we think of this then? The ultimate fried egg 911. There's a strong argument that it's actually the ultimate 911 full stop. Delivering Porsche its 16th outright victory at the 24 Hours of Le Mans 25 years ago. This, of course, is the 911 GT1 98. It's hard to believe that it was a quarter of a century ago that this car returned Porsche to the top of the pile when it came to endurance racing. You might be able to see a couple of the Group C cars behind me, the 956 and 962. Well, that really was an era that Porsche dominated endurance racing in the 1980s. Of course, by the 1990s and the demise for Group C, Porsche pulled away from the top level of endurance motorsport and it was left to customer teams to carry the can. The Porsche factory returned to top-tier endurance racing in 1996 in the BPR Global GT Series. Entering into the GT1 category, Porsche developed a new race car simply called the 911 GT1, which, as part of the series, would tackle the famous Le Mans 24 Hours. The 911 GT1 was made in 3 iterations, first in 1996, then as the GT1 Evo in 1997, followed by the GT1 98. It would be the 1998 car which triumphed at Le Mans as the number 26 driven by Alan McNish, Stefan Ortelli and Laurent Aiello took the checkered flag fittingly in Porsche's 50th anniversary year. There were 2 works vehicles that competed at Le Mans in 1998. There were also 2 customer vehicles that unfortunately didn't qualify, but the 2 works cars, well, brought home a 1-2 victory created by Norbert Singer, again, the father of Porsche motorsport to all intents and purposes. It was he that designed the 956s and the 962 behind me from that halo Group C era. And it would be this car, again, a ground-up race car, albeit with a 911 moniker, that would return Porsche to the top of the pile with that outright victory at Le Mans, the 16th of Porsche's to date 19 overall victories. Now, as you can see, although there are certain design hallmarks that might relate it in a tedious way to the Porsche 996, the 911 of the time, I mean, this is actually, in name at least, a Porsche 911, but of course it deviates completely, really, from any other road-going Porsche 911 to have ever rolled off the factory at Zuffenhausen. The car was, nevertheless, as you'd expect for a Porsche race car, groundbreaking. Carbon chassis, carbon monocoque, tubular frame. There is a flat 6 engine in there, twin turbocharged, producing 550 horsepower. It's mid-engined, so a mid-engine 911, with the gearbox mounted behind the engine. So as I say, this is all completely different to the normal setup that we're used to as Porsche 911 enthusiasts. GT1 class, the rules stipulated you had to build just one road car in order to take this car racing. And that's exactly what Porsche did for the GT1 98. Where's that car today? Well, of course, it's in the Porsche collection. As for this particular car, well, it's actually one of the 2 customer GT1s that Porsche built, went to Zakspeed. Unfortunately for Le Mans, it didn't qualify. According to Norbert Singer, there was a tyre issue. To add a little more meat to the bones here, it's worth pointing out that Zakspeed was one of Germany's leading race squads. They ran this Porsche 911 GT1 98 in close cooperation with the factory in the top GT1 category. Technically, the customer team car is identical to the Le Mans winning factory 911 GT1 98, featuring the first ever Porsche designed carbon fibre chassis, as I mentioned, as well as carbon fibre brakes. Another novelty is the sequential 6-speed gearbox, which we'll come on to later. While scoring numerous top 10 results in the championship that year, in the words of Porsche, there are also disappointments. After an accident at Homestead, USA in October 1998, a heavily damaged car was brought back to the Porsche Development Centre in Weissach. There, it was rebuilt to look like the Le Mans winner from 1998. Today, the Porsche Museum uses it as representative of the works car, which is also part of the collection. Continuing with the specs, as I say, 550 horsepower, weight just 970 kilos. Now, of course, being a ground-up race car built for the purpose of, well, winning Le Mans, really, this allowed Norbert Singer to design this car specifically, of course, for racing. An example of that The gearbox is mounted behind the engine rather than in front of it like you normally would for a 911. And again, that is for ease of access when it comes to maybe changing ratios or swapping a gearbox in a race situation. Of the two works cars, of course, they're pretty much identical. The Le Mans winner, as you can see here, has these kind of red or orange flared bits on its livery. The sister car for the works team had yellow. There's a couple of sneaky 996 hallmarks dotted around this car that you have to keep peeled for. Of course, the fried egg headlights at front, the rear cluster in the back. The door handles are original 996 items as well. It's as tedious as it gets, I'm afraid, on that front. The livery, of course, the Mobile 1 livery, well, it's iconic. It's extremely well known. It was Tony Hatter, he who designed the Porsche 993, of course, as well as the Carrera GT. It was he who helped design the race livery for these cars. And I think he rather diplomatically says it was a bit of a challenge to apply the livery to a car that had lots of different panels, particularly when you have to consider that these swaths that go over the body all had to align when the different panels were then assembled to go over the chassis of the GT198. Now, Mr. Hatter's involvement with the GT1 didn't end there. For the race itself in 1998, he was given the task of reporting on the Nissan team further up the pit lane and keeping an eye on their race schedule, which helped feed some more information back to the pits at Porsche, who could adapt or adjust their strategy accordingly. I mentioned the engine. It is a flat six. It's twin turbocharged, producing 550 horsepower. Air to the engine being fed via this huge scoop sitting atop the cockpit. It is by far the longest 911. I mean, you can even see next to the 935 that we've got here just how long even the wheelbase is. As I say, a ground-up sports car built for the purpose of going racing, nothing else. As I say, the 911 Link, to all intents and purposes, is tedious, really. Nevertheless, this is the last ever 911 to win Le Mans outright. Now, it's quite interesting looking at the back, and it kind of helps you understand why Porsche decided to have this as mid-engined. In putting the engine further towards the middle of the car allows for this huge rear diffuser at the back of the GT198, and actually it was a very similar principle that was adopted on later 911 RSRs from 2018 onwards, when it went from a fully rear-engined race car to a mid-rear engined race car. Again, that kind of technology or concept of moving the engine slightly forward in order to better utilise airflow and downforce at the back of the car, that concept started here with the GT1 car of 1998. Anyway, that's the back of the car. Let's take a look inside. Okay then, so much as I would dearly love to clamber inside the GT198, the reality is I'm just not getting in there. It's very tight, as you can see. First thing to notice, of course, is despite this being a ground-up race car, is its right-hand drive. Of course, with most racetracks featuring predominantly right-hand bends, it makes sense to put the driver on the right-hand side for weight distribution purposes. Despite that, as you can see, the gear shifter is on the right-hand side. And again, it just comes down to ease of use for the drivers and what they're used to, particularly with most drivers on the continent traditionally driving left-hand drive cars. So that's why the shifter is on the right-hand side here. It does mean, of course, there's something extra to climb over when getting into this car. And there were quite a lot of driver changes during Le Mans, of course. The GT1 era featuring 3 drivers rather than 2. I can barely imagine getting in this at my leisure now, let alone in a race situation. But as you can see, everything else within that carbon fibre monocoque, it's all absolutely built for the purpose of racing. That pretty much concludes today's video here from the Porsche Museum. Thank you so much to the team here at the museum for allowing me access to these cars and able to relay the story of them to you. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in another video soon.